Well, hello, it's Mornin, and it is Friday morning. Yeah, Friday. We are on Exodus Part 3. The first two parts on Monday and Wednesday, we did a brief introduction to the book of Exodus, and now we're going to do a devotional within the book of Exodus. Now, I have a confession to make. Some of you are going to recognize this devotional, and that's because I gave it last Friday. Every once in a while. Well, maybe more often than every once in a while. But now and again, every once in a while, periodically, maybe more commonly than I'd like to admit, I have a brain fart. And that's what happened last Friday. Last week, we did Genesis. We did an introduction to Genesis, and then we were going to do a devotional out of Genesis. And I started doing the devotional. I did it. It was great. And then at the This is a Serious Podcast on Saturday night, we were talking about the devotional, and I was talking about what the topic of the Genesis devotional was. And my son Sam, who was sharp, and maybe you guys who were sharp and noticed the issue during the Friday devotional last Friday morning, he said, "Wait a minute, doesn't that happen in Exodus?" Yep. Yes, it does. So my Genesis devotional was out of Exodus. There is my embarrassing brain fart. Fully admitted, I blew it. So I'm going to do that devotional again, and I'm going to include it here at the end of Exodus because I think it's a good devotional. And now, if you go back into the playlist for Well, Hello, It's Morning, you'll see that there is a proper Genesis devotional to take place in the place of the one that said was from Genesis but was actually from Exodus. Okay. I'll get past it. I will. I promise. I'll get past it. Okay. There we are. I'm past it. So let's have a look at Exodus a little bit more. Let's take a look at I did it again. I always do that. Let's take a look at the plagues. The 10 plagues. The 10 plagues that the Lord put upon Egypt while Moses was trying to negotiate for the freedom of the people of Israel. He would say, hey, this needs to happen or there's going to be trouble. And Pharaoh would say, no, forget it. And then the Lord would put a plague upon the people of Egypt. There were 10 plagues. Let's go through them quickly. First plague was the blood, where Moses put his staff in the river Nile and turned the Nile into blood, the whole Nile into blood. That would have had a devastating impact on that ecosystem on the river. The river was a major source of life for the Egyptian Empire, for the crops and the animals and so forth. So that was a big deal. But Pharaoh didn't think so. And so away we go again. Plague number 2, a plague of frogs. Frogs hopping everywhere, all over the place. Then there was lice or gnats, just an infestation of the ground and the plants. And if you've ever had tons of gnats or no-see-ums, little flying, and they get in your skin and they're biting. You can't even feel them on your skin. You look down, you got 10 of them on your arm, and they're all biting you. Or lice. Who enjoys getting lice? Yeah. Flies, and then an infestation of flies, and then livestock. Tremendous amounts of their livestock keeled over dead. And then boils. Ooh, boils. Boils are like pimples that are on steroids. Every once in a while, when I was a kid, I would get a boil, and my mom would be like, "Have you got a boil?" I'd be like, "Oh, no." She's like, "You've got a boil. Come here, bring me that." There were two ways that I remember, two old school ways that my family knew to get rid of boils. One of them was you took a bottle and you heated the bottle up. I don't know if you put water in it and boiled the water and then poured the water out. I don't know. But you'd take a warm bottle and a glass bottle, because that's all we had back then. And you stick it over the boil, and then the heat and the seal, it would act like suction, and it would suck out all the grossness, the pus. The other way was to lance it, and that's what my mom's favorite means of doing it was. She would take a sewing needle, and she would put it on a hot element and sterilize that needle, and then she'd take it and she'd poke it into the boil. And then she would squeeze. I know it's gross, but she would squeeze and all this pus would come out. But she would say, I'm not done yet. I'd be like, oh, there's all this pus, you're done. She'd be like, no, I'm not done yet. And she'd squeeze, and she would say, I have to get the core. Down in the middle of all the boils, of a boil, there's this hard nugget of whatever, of pus or whatever. It's that's what Mom would call the core. And she would squeeze until that core popped out. I know it's gross. But once that popped out, then she'd be like, okay, then I've got it. And then she would clean it with warm water and maybe some hydrogen peroxide or something to cleanse it, and put a Band-Aid over it, and we were done. I would get one boil every couple of years in, like on my knee. I think maybe I had one on my arm once. I would get one boil every once in a while. These people were getting multiple boils all over their body. Gross. And they're sore. They hurt. Awful. Okay. Hail. And this was not just any ordinary hail. Big hail, which we've had before, but have you ever had hail that when it hits the ground, lights on fire? Yeah. I've never seen that. They did, though, because that's what was happening. Locust coming eating all the crops. All those locusts, all those grasshoppers eating their crops. Darkness. 3 days of darkness. Just dark. Pitch black. Dark. And then finally, the death of the firstborn, where the angel of death would flew through Egypt. And if your doorpost did not have the blood of an unblemished male lamb painted over the doorposts, the angel would take the firstborn son out of your family. And it didn't matter whether it was the most poverty-stricken handmaiden, or all the way up to the Pharaoh himself. Firstborn sons died that night. Terrible thing. Finally, at that point, then Pharaoh says, "Okay, take your people and go." 10 plagues. I want you to note that the number 10 in the Bible has a couple of different meanings, but one of the meanings is completeness. That there is a completeness. When you see the number 10, that means that a complete thing is happening. God, 10 plagues over the people of Egypt, over the most powerful nation at the time. It's as if God was saying, you are completely under my sovereign control. Every aspect of your life, I have sovereign control over. And I can put a plague into each of those areas of your life to make things difficult for you. It's important to note, or neat to note as well, that each of those plagues poked at or took a shot at one of the Egyptian gods. They had numerous gods. The 10 biggest gods were each impacted by one of these plagues. For instance, the river Nile turning into blood. I believe that the river god, the Nile god, was named Hapi, Hapi, and he was the god of life, god of the river, and turning the river into blood took a direct shot at that. I'm going to take Hapi's power away. And then you go all the way down to the 10th one, and Pharaoh himself this was a shot at Pharaoh himself. He was believed to be a descendant of the gods, the god Ra, the most powerful of the Egyptian gods. And Yahweh said, I can take your firstborn son. Just like that. God was demonstrating not only complete sovereignty over the people of Egypt, but showing his authority over the spiritual realms as well, and saying, the gods that you serve are all subject to me. I outrank them. I'm more powerful than they are. I am the God of Israel. Take me seriously. Do as I say. Our God is sovereign. He is completely sovereign over all of his creation. We're going through a really interesting time, and there is this virus out there that's wreaking havoc on people. Lots of people are getting sick. Lots of people are freaked out and concerned about it. And whether or not you agree or not, it doesn't matter. It is important for us to realize that our God is sovereign. And he's sovereign over COVID-19 too. That doesn't mean that we can be flagrant and careless in how we live in the world around us and assume that the virus is nothing. It can have a very real impact on the people around us and on ourselves. But God is sovereign over everything. Even Egypt, the most powerful nation in the world, he is sovereign over the powerful nations of today's world, and he's sovereign over that teensy teensy little virus that's causing so much trouble everywhere as well. So remember that. It is good to know that as a believer in Jesus, as a follower of Jesus, you serve the risen King who is sovereign over all. Okay, that is our Friday devotional in the proper place, the book of Exodus. Yeah, go back and have a look at the devotional that is properly now in its place in the book of Genesis. All right, take care. Have a great one. We will see you soon, I hope. See ya.